Welcome to another Orbiter tutorial. This is Tex, and this will be part 5 in which we will cover docking. Well, congratulations, we have actually made it to the International Space Station, so if this is your first time to get there, definitely give yourself a pat on the back and feel proud of yourself. This is a huge accomplishment in your Orbiter career. I know when I first started, I was very proud of myself when I first got to ISS because it would have been Orbiter 2006 edition. When I first found Orbiter, I knew absolutely nothing about orbital mechanics. I just knew that I came in fascinated with space and space flight, and I was determined to figure it out. I thought that, I could just take off and aim right for the ISS and boom, I'd be there. But I was quickly brought to reality when I realized just how complicated it is to maneuver a vessel around in space and to learn how orbital mechanics work. So hopefully these tutorials are helping you in that regard. But with that said, let's dive right in. We need to go ahead and proceed with our docking maneuver here. So we're right where we left off. I have the info box opened. You can access that by clicking info here. And I'm going to touch on it again, even though I did in the previous video, just because it is essential to docking. What we want to do is select vessel and make sure ISS is selected, and we're looking for the docking port frequencies. When you want to open the COM nav MFD to tune one of the nav frequencies to the docking port of your choosing. It really doesn't matter which one you choose. It's up to you, as long as they're available. Currently, all of the docking ports are free, so no other vessel is docked. If there was one docked, it would tell you the name of the vessel at the appropriate docking port. In the last part, I actually tuned nav2 to docking port number 2, and that's where I intend to dock, but just for demonstration purposes, I will press SL plus to highlight nav3. Nav1 is currently tuned to ISS's transponder. We no longer need that because we've already rendezvoused. It's a long-range transponder, so but I'll leave those alone just for demonstration purposes. I'll choose nav3 and let's tune it to 137.40 for the number 1 docking port. So you can do that by clicking these buttons here. 137.40. There we go, and it confirms docking port number 1. So that is done. You can close that window, and I'm just going to open the docking MFD over here and power this one down. Personal preference, it really doesn't matter which side, of course. But the next thing we want to do is slave the docking MFD to the appropriate frequency, and you can click nav to cycle through your nav frequencies. So nav 1 is open by default, and again that was ISS's transponder. Press nav again and that goes to nav 2, and that tells you here docking port number 2. IDS stands for instrument docking system. So it's telling us the instrument docking system for docking port number 2 at ISS is this MFD is currently slaved to that frequency. Press nav again, it goes to nav 3, the one we just set for docking port number 1, and so on. So let's go back to nav 2, and the next thing you want to do is press HUD. Now that transfers data from the docking MFD to your HUD, and the biggest thing is it gives you this docking corridor here, which you'll notice is just a row of boxes. You can almost think of it like an ILS landing system, like a commercial airliners will follow an ILS landing system. It guides them right to the runway. Well, the docking corridor here, if you fly your vessel right through the boxes, will guide you directly into the docking port. So the first step we want to do is rotate our vessel so that we're actually pointing out toward the end of the row of boxes here. Okay, now let's translate forward. You'll notice that brings our velocity vector down here where we want it to go. This is our velocity vector relative to ISS. And let's keep our velocity nice and low. It's at 2.26 meters per second, so that's probably pretty good. What we can do is translate down and to the left to bring that velocity vector exactly where we want it. And now we can carefully time accelerate, never over 10x this close to a vessel in orbit. So as we move over there, let's translate over right where we want that velocity vector to be. So as we move into that docking corridor, let's go ahead and get ready to brake. So I'm going to rotate and face that velocity vector, and now I'm just going to translate back and down. Just move that velocity vector, just cancel out that velocity and move that velocity vector kind of toward ISS down that direction, because you can see this arrow right here. It says DISS, distance ISS 390 meters in closing. That arrow is pointing to where ISS actually is. This arrow VISS is pointing to where our velocity vector is relative to ISS. So what we want to do now is use our rotation RCS and rotate so that we are orienting the vessel to face ISS. So just follow that arrow right here. So I need to rotate down and maybe to the left a little bit. I'm actually just gonna pitch down, I should say, and ISS should come into view here in just a moment. There it is. All right. So what we need to do is, you'll see the one side of the boxes has 2 lines on it. We want the side with the 2 lines to be above us. So essentially we're going to fly right through the corridor here with the 2 lines above our vessel, and that orients us in the correct alignment with the docking port. Otherwise, if we come in the other way, we'd be upside down for the docking port. So I need to roll over. And now is probably a good time to go ahead and open your nose cone. We don't want to forget to do that. The huge X here reminds us that our nose cone is closed at the moment, so we can press K to open that. Alright, so we're getting there. Okay, so obviously what I need to do now is I need to translate down and to the left so that I can move inside of the docking corridor. So I'll go ahead and do that. Let's translate down and to the left, and you'll see that arrow is telling me where my velocity vector is relative to ISS again. Just kind of want to keep it pointed down that direction, so you can actually see our velocity is taking us down. But let's begin looking at the docking MFD over here. You'll see this number TOFS, and what that is it's a tangential offset from the approach path. So this the value of that number, it's given to us in units of the approach cone radius at the current target distance. And you'll notice that it's currently counting down, which is what we want to see, because when that number drops below 1, it indicates that we're within the approach cone. So when I'm talking about the approach cone, what exactly is that? Well, you can see that illustrated right here on the MFD by this red circle. What we want to see is we want to see the circle turn green, and when that happens, that indicates that we're within the approach cone, and TOFS number will also be under 1 when that happens. But what the approach cone is it's just it indicates the size of the approach cone at the current dock distance. So it helps. It's almost like the docking corridor, the boxes you see here. This gives you a graphic of that corridor on the docking MFD itself. So we want to essentially fly our vessel directly through the approach cone, which guides us into the docking port. And as we get closer to the docking port, that approach cone will get smaller and smaller. You'll see this circle, once it turns green and we approach the docking port, it will get smaller and smaller. So we're outside of the approach cone because we're too high, obviously. So let's translate down a bit more and get down in that approach cone a little bit quicker here. Directly below that, you'll see the TVEL number, and that is tangential velocity. So that is our velocity relative to our target, but it's projected into plane normal to the approach path. So don't confuse it with your actual relative velocity, which is indicated here. This one's a little bit different because it's projected into plane normal to the approach path. So it directly correlates to your approach path. But you'll see this little yellow arrow here, and that yellow arrow refers to your tangential velocity number here, and that helps to tell you the direction your velocity is taking you. So currently, because I translated down to get into the docking corridor, which actually you can see we are now within, the circle has turned green, but it tells you the direction your velocity is taking you. So if I translate to the right, you notice how the arrow is now pointing down and to the right. Translate to the left, Now it's pointing to the left. So that gives you an idea, just a visual reference of the direction your velocity is taking you. And once we're all aligned with the docking port, that arrow will kind of be pointing right here in the center and almost just be non-existent. So as I continue to move down, once we move within the docking corridor, we need to get ourselves aligned on three different axes, I guess I can say. Essentially, what we need to consider is first of all, of course, translational alignment, which we're sort of adjusting right now by moving down inside of the docking corridor. But you can see that graphically on the docking MFD by this cross right here. So if I translate down, up, left, or right, I will influence the way this cross actually moves. And in order to stay within the docking corridor, we want to keep this cross within the green circle, within the docking corridor. To be perfectly aligned, translationally, with the docking port, we want the cross to be right in the center of the target. So right now, it's the cross is down below the target and it's to the right. So what it's telling me is I need to translate down more and a little over to the right. So as we move down, you can actually see that we are moving down more inside of the docking corridor. You'll notice that cross will begin to move up to the center of the target. But unfortunately, that is not the only thing we need to consider. We also need to consider our rotational alignment with the docking port. So as we continue to move down into the docking corridor, what I'm going to do is switch to rotation, and I'm going to pitch the vessel up. And as I do, you'll notice this red X has come into view. Now this red X is our rotational alignment with the docking port. And we adjust that by either pitching up, down, or yawing left and right. So what we want is, again, similar to the cross being in the center of the target, we want the X to also be in the center of the target. The X is currently red because we are more than 2.5 degrees out of alignment with the docking port, rotationally wise. So if we pitch up, because the X is high, so we need to pitch up, and the X is over to the left, so we need to yaw to the left in order to bring that into the center of the target, you'll notice that once it gets within 2.5 degrees of alignment, now the X is turned white. So that's what we want. We want that X to be white and right in the center of the target. Also, now that our translational alignment seems to be aligned pretty much as far as right and left, we're still high, so let's translate down. Alright, and as that happens, you'll see that cross begins to move up. Again, the tangential velocity arrow is indicating our velocity is taking us down. You can clearly see that. Also, you can see we're not actually closing on ISS. We need to start closing a little bit. This number is negative, and the bar here is green. That indicates we're moving away from ISS. So we need to get a positive number there. Let's translate forward. Alright, there you go. Now we have a positive number, and the bar has turned yellow, so that indicates we're closing on ISS. We can close a little bit faster. Let's keep it under 1 meter per second, though. Alright. So we are clearly moving inside of the docking corridor, so everything is looking good there. Let's just continue to come down a little bit. And as we get inside of that corridor, let's try and just stay right inside of it as we coast forward toward ISS. So I talked about our translational alignment with the cross, our rotational alignment with the X, which is adjusted by pitching up and down, yawing left and right. The last alignment we need to consider is the longitudinal rotation indicator, and that's this white triangle right here, and that is simply adjusted by rotation RCS and banking right or left. You'll notice as I bank right or left that arrow moves, but now you'll actually notice that the arrow has disappeared. Now that happens when your rotational alignment is more than 5 degrees off. So the X here, when your rotational alignment, this X is more than 5 degrees off of the docking port, you can't even see that little triangle for the longitudinal rotation indicator. So get yourself more aligned with the X by rotating, pitching, yawing, and now our triangle has become visible again. So we want that triangle to be white and at the 12 o'clock position. So when that happens, that means our bank alignment is set for the docking port, is perfectly aligned. So right there. So we'll keep an eye on everything as we approach. You'll notice I'm kind of drifting to the left, so let's translate back to the right and up. So let's just, we pretty much covered everything as far as the alignment goes with the docking port. So now we just need to stay on top of everything as we slowly move in toward the docking port. Really take your time with this. There's no reason to rush this. You're already here, so just take your time. All right. So you'll notice I'm going to go back and forth between rotation RCS and linear RCS to adjust all of the alignment, rotational alignment here. So, and then now I need to pitch up. All right. Longitudinal rotation indicator looks good. Rotational alignment looks good. So we'll go back to linear RCS. Need to translate to the left and up just a bit. And we can probably close on ISS just a little bit quicker, really just in the interest of keeping the video kind of short. But again, really take your time. Don't rush this. And I will begin to use the control key now to make micro bursts with micro adjustments by using micro bursts with the linear RCS and even the rotation RCS, just to keep ourselves aligned with the docking port, because we only need to make just micro adjustments in order to keep everything lined up here. So you'll notice that as we get closer and that the approach cone gets smaller and smaller, you really have to stay on top of your alignments. Things can move on you quite a bit sometimes, and so you almost have to get a feel for the direction that things are going to slip, and kind of anticipate that and be prepared to use your RCS to adjust that. So you can see our rotation is actually slipped off just a little bit. So I'll pitch up to the left just a little bit. There we go. And when I did that, that actually affected our linear alignment, our translational alignment. So need to correct that. Okay. And what you see there is pretty much aligned. It's about as aligned as you can get, but it's not going to stay aligned. It'll start slipping off as we get closer. You notice the approach cone is shrinking. It's getting smaller and smaller. So as we get close to the docking port, just before we make contact, you want to brake and bring your closure velocity down to 0.01 for a nice soft dock. That would be ideal. So definitely, you want to begin braking before you get there, and just do a nice slow braking maneuver. So actually I wasn't paying attention, but you can see our translation alignment slipped off a little bit. No big deal. Just go ahead and correct that. Alright, so just bear with me for a moment here as I bring it in for a soft dock, hopefully. And that will wrap up this tutorial.
Translation.
So I'm going to brake just a little bit. We're getting relatively close now. Not too much. Just get it under 1 meter per second in closure velocity. Okay. We're going to keep coasting into the docking port. Brake a little bit more. I am using the control key again for just micro burst adjustments here. Almost there. Alright, so our closure velocity is down to 0.5 meter per second. Our distance is just under 35 meters. Notice that approach cone is shrinking and our translational alignment kind of slipped off a little bit. Just stay on top of things. But Shouldn't take too long now.
Translation.
Looking good. Okay, we're 15 meters out. I'm going to go ahead and brake just a bit more. And as I brake, it was affecting my translational alignment, so just keep an eye on that. Alright, so rotational alignment slipped off just a bit. And remember, as you adjust that, you will also have to go back and adjust your translational alignment. So I need to translate to the right and down just a little bit. There we go. Okay, we're almost at 5 meters from the docking port.
Rotation. Translation.
Let's brake a little bit more.
Rotation. Translation.
Alright, we are perfectly lined up. We're within 2 meters now of the docking port. Let's go ahead and do our final braking. Just bring our closure velocity down to 0.01 within the final meter of the docking port. Keep an eye on your alignment. Rotation slipped off just a little bit. It's actually, I mean, it's so close. I'm probably just being too much of a perfectionist, but you can see everything looks really lined up. I'm just going to leave it alone. Actually, it did slip to the left a little bit. I saw that. There we go. All right, let's fix that translation now. Okay. All right, closure velocity 0.02. Let's bring that down to 0.01. There we go. Oh.
Translation.
Let's fix that real quick. All right. There we go. All right. We're about to make contact. Any second now. There we go. Nice soft docking. So, as we get the congratulations message. All right, congratulations indeed. We have made it to the International Space Station, and look at that view. We are somewhere over the ocean right now, but yes, definitely congratulations. You have made it, and thank you for hanging in there and following the tutorial. I hope that it was helpful. I think the next part I will definitely go ahead and try and cover re-entry and landing back at Cape Canaveral. That way you have a full flight that you can learn and follow along with. So as always, thank you guys again for watching. Be sure to leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. Like the video, subscribe for updates, and we will catch you in the next video for a little re-entry action. That's always fun. And hopefully we'll land back at Cape Canaveral in one piece. All right, guys, listen, take care, and we'll see you in the next video.